Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be discussing the Jordan 6 Carmine. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Jordan 6 Carmine and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications just so you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like shock drops, raffles, Sitelists, etc., follow my Twitter KeithAdam10 and personals for you. This way you're always in the loop 24/7 whenever there is a restock or drop, etc. For those who don't know, the Jordan 6 Carmine releases on February 13th, tomorrow. Retail will be $200 for men, $140 for grade school, $80 for preschool, and $60 for toddler, but we'll only be focusing on the men's pairs today. Be sure to watch my How to Cop video if you have not yet, if you happen to be watching this before the drop, of course. Otherwise, let's continue on. In order to determine if the Jordan 6 Carmine will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially the pair is going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding, not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather just a hold margin over X period of time. Essentially, are these worth your time? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, stock for all sizes combined worldwide is pretty high at 180,000 pairs, but to be expected for a classic Jordan retro. However, what makes this situation so interesting is how many pairs Nike may actually not end up releasing due to the defects that we were discussing not too long ago. If you guys recall, in my How to Cop guide, this is something I did discuss with you guys due to the manufacturing defects for these Carmine 6s. It's certainly a very unique situation, and StockX even had a note about it on their page the other day before they later did remove it. It's very possible it may be a small amount or perhaps even larger. Either way, this is only good news for the value. The sneakers, of course, can't possibly hurt it no matter how little or how many it is. More importantly, the demand for these is absolutely insane, just like many classic retros with the Nike Air on them. I'd say this is certainly one of the more demanded ones though, and the sale volume and bids currently definitely illustrate that. Therefore, as discussed in the How to Cop guide, I'm personally going to be going for all men's sizes, as I do expect them to be easy small profit with a decent margin. Nothing insane, but an easy money opportunity for sure. My focus will be on the larger sizes, the bigger the better when it comes to this pair. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have been declining over the past week, which is completely normal since people are just unloading the early pairs, and again, this is a very high stock sneaker, so this is often what does end up happening. Additionally, what also ends up happening with these situations with very high stock and high demand is they end up being slightly oversold from people trying to unload the pairs before the drop. This ends up emphasizing the impulsivity effect even more that we discussed very frequently, since they end up becoming slightly oversold. Since it's the night before the drop today, I don't expect any drastic changes leading up to 10 a.m. Eastern time or even after the Europe release. It should stay around this 260 to 265 range, with at max maybe another $5 drop on average, so perhaps 255 to 260, nothing too insane. However, we will see a more notable change post-US drop. This is when we will experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect, which I was referencing earlier. You guys should already know what I'm referring to by now, as we do discuss this almost every seller hold video, yet it still almost always occurs. Sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of the pre-drop prices. This isn't always the case, but majority of the time it is, and it should be the case on these as well. During the morning of the 13th, after all drops occur and they are fully out of stock until late afternoon and evening, we should see a pretty solid premium for these. Sometimes I don't always feel it will have a 10% increase, such as the Volt Golds, which I did mention wouldn't see that much, but with this amount of demand for these Carmines, I could definitely see a 10% increase at least, despite the relatively high stock. Assuming they are around a conservative 260 right before the drop, prices could very well end up settling around $285 on average. If prices remain at 270 before the drop though, we can even see some sizes getting into the upper 290 range. Keep this number in mind because we will be revisiting this number when discussing the most optimal times to sell at. Keep in mind, these will just be the post-drop prices for a finite period of time, aka temporary. Now let's discuss what prices will look like once shipments go out in the 1 to 2 week range. So during this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation, aside from the amount of pairs that were already in circulation from the early pairs and in-store pairs, of course, too. When it comes to these very high stock pairs, the effects are normally very noticeable. Now, considering many were already in circulation, demand is extremely high, and a fair amount may not end up dropping because of the defects I did mention earlier, I'd side between the 10 to 15% range, closer to the lower end, so we can use 12% as our amount of decrease, for example. This would hypothetically leave prices slightly lower than the pre-drop prices, potentially as low as $250 to $255 on average. Remember, some sizes will be more than that, such as the large sizes, while some may be less than that. Numbers aside though, just from anecdotal experience with other similar high demand, high stock classic retros, I can definitely see these settling back in the pre-drop ranges, which would then just be slightly higher than that $250 to $255 range even after the shipments do go out. Now that the average price ranges at those points in time are evident though, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time. Additionally, a lot of these non-Jordan 1 classic retros don't always see the most notable increases, such as the Fire Red 5, for example. However, the pairs that have seem to be more sought after normally do see a pretty reasonable increase in value. It's never a rapid increase, but rather a much more gradual and consistent increase. While on the topic of Jordan 6s, in fact, the infrared Jordan 6 from 2019 are up in the $350 to $390 range in most sizes, after only going for about $220 to $235 initially. I expect a very similar situation for the Carmines, potentially an even faster rate of increase, since I do believe demand is slightly higher for these. So overall, I do expect these to increase from that post-shipment range. Again, before they begin increasing, we will see that decline in price as pairs do begin going into circulation. So yes, overall, from that point, I do expect them to increase. So finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially the price you could have gotten versus the price in say 12 to 14 months, aka are these actually worth your time? Although I do believe that these will have a pretty solid and consistent increase in value over time, it is worth noting that the 2014 Carmines peaked around the $350 to $370 range in most sizes. It's very possible that these will surpass that eventually in multiple years, but I do see that being the peak for these in at least a 1 to 2 year range. If you could have sold during the Impulsivity Effect prices at around $285 versus waiting a year for prices around $350, that's only going to be about an extra 20% to 25% profit. For having to wait that long for an extra 20 to 25% profit, it's honestly not an ideal situation in my opinion. So while yes, these should increase over time, I personally will be quick selling my pairs during the Impulsivity Effect before the majority of pairs go into circulation, because I don't intend on holding these for 1 to 2 years for an extra 25% profit or so from that Impulsivity Effect. You could quick sell with all in-store pairs, of course, during the Impulsivity Effect, but for online pairs for Nike, you will have to select the 2-day shipping, which is another $5, and try to time the tracking with your StockX or GOAT sale, since they only do give you 2 business days. Some sites like Finish Line and JD, or even some foot sites for certain locations but not all, do ship within several days, so that is nice, and you may still be able to take advantage of those Impulsivity Effect prices on those platforms. However, for those orders that may arrive in longer times than that, you would have to list them on eBay as a pre-order with 30-day handling enabled. That's if you do plan on taking advantage of the Impulsivity Effect prices, as I do plan on doing. For those of you who can't do any of the above with your online orders and prefer not to use eBay, if they hypothetically end up settling around $250 once all shipments are in circulation, when these peak, that would be then around a 30% extra profit rather than the 20, because of course then you'd be getting less initially at $250 rather than the $285 range. But even then, I don't personally think that 30% to 35% extra is still ideal, for 1 to 2 years at least. If you don't need the capital though, by all means go for the hold. It's not going to hurt you in any way, because I don't see these going down. I would just personally prefer to hold other items with higher margins. Also, just a note in general, for anyone considering holding who has low capital, you should never hold anything in general if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you need money to go for all drops, just try to sell sell these during the impulsivity effect like I was discussing before. So to conclude, I ended up rating this a 4 out of 10 hold, below average, if you sell during the impulsivity effect. You might end up missing 20% extra profit in the 1 to 2 year range, while if you were to wait for the shipments, you'll miss an extra 30 to 35% profit, which is definitely a little more. So if that's your specific case where you do have to wait that long for shipments to come in before you sell, maybe for you guys it could be a 5.5 or 5 out of 10 hold. Still nothing great, because I don't think a 30 to 35% increase over 1 to 2 years is that fantastic. Personally, that's not an ideal amount for myself, so I'll be trying to sell these fast, even though in general they will be increasing. What's always most important is whether or not they're worth your time, because there are thousands of fish in the sea in this market. Anyway, good luck on the drop. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed or you perhaps learned a thing or two. Also, subscribe and enable post notifications just to stay 100% updated on every hype sneaker. Remember, if you guys need proxies or Nike sneakers accounts, be sure to check the links in the description for TARS and KIP proxies. And of course, follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and personals for you, so you guys always stay 100% updated on everything. With that though, I'll see you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck on this drop if you're watching this before the drop occurs. And if it's after the drop, of course, congratulations if you did end up copying your pair.
Why you hurting me with your foot? Can you find somewhere else to keep it put? Get your foot off my foot.